So today we're going to make a massive batch of some extremely delicious pickles. For this recipe, we're going to need some bay leaves, some fresh sprigs of dill, some garlic, a lot of garlic, some dried chilies d'arbol, some black peppercorns, some pickling spice, just a general blend of pickling spices. For the brine, we're going to use sugar, we're going to use kosher salt and some apple cider vinegar, and then we're going to be pickling some carrots and a ton of washed cucumbers, pickling cucumbers that we will cut into spears. So first things first, we will prep the cucumbers, and then we'll make the brine, get all these ingredients into each jar, fill it with the veggies, top it off with the brine, and get it into the canner. The first thing we want to do is we want to prep our pickles for slicing. So we have two ends here. We have the stem end and what's called the blossom end, and we'll take just a little nip off both of the ends here to keep this organic matter from decomposing inside our jar. So now that the ends are all snipped off, we can cut our pickles into spears. Now this is quite a thick pickle here. I'm gonna leave this one. However, this side you can choose to cut them in halves, or like I'm doing, you can cut them into thirds, and that's a little bit more the standard pickle size. Now that all our pickle spears are prepped, we can start prepping the brine. For the brine, in a large pot, we will add 8 cups of water. We'll add 6 cups of apple cider vinegar. We'll add half a cup of salt and a quarter cup of sugar. But I'm going to add the water and the vinegar to this first, heat it up on the stove, and then add in the salt and the sugar. You want to make sure that your canning jars are nice and clean. Now you can do this. You can do this by washing them in the sink with some soapy water or in the dishwasher, but you want to make sure that all your utensils, all your cooking equipment is nice and clean. Now it's time to start prepping our jars. First, we'll take a large bay leaf or 2 small bay leaves and put them into each jar. Next is the garlic. We will put either 1 large clove or 2 medium cloves into each jar, or if you really like garlic, you can put as many cloves in there as you'd like. Next, we'll add some dried black peppercorns, as many as can fit in your thumb, middle finger, and index finger pinch. So it looks like to be about 6 to 8. Next, we'll add in 1 dried chili to each jar. Or if you like your pickles really spicy, you can add in multiple. Next, to each jar, we'll add in 2 sprigs of fresh dill. Next, add in 1 tablespoon of pickling spice to each jar. And lastly, for the preparation stage, add in 1/4 teaspoon of alum to each jar. And this is added to preserve the crisp and the crunch of the pickles. So now that our jars are filled with all our additives, we're gonna start stuffing the pickles. We'll take as many pickles as we can and shove them into the jar. Now the goal for this is to get as many in there as possible. So you have to be kind of creative, really flex your Tetris skills, and there might be a little bit of pickle, save that one for the end, coming out of the top here. I'll take a knife and I'll just kind of trim the tops off, because we want to save about a 1/2 inch of headspace between the brine and the top of the jar. The more pickles you get in here, the more you can eat, and the longer time it is between batches of pickles you have to make. And then what I like to do is, since the carrots are a little bit stiffer, you can really jam these in here. And this is, initially I had added them in for color, for a little bit of contrast, but as it turns out, they're just about as good as the pickles when they're done pickling. Okay, so now take a knife here and I will measure about 1/2 inch off the top. Just run the knife kind of around the inside of the jar. you go. So we'll continue to fill all these jars with all our pickles and carrots, and then we will fill the brine. Now that our jars are stuffed to the brim with our pickles and our carrots, we'll take the brine and we'll ladle it into each jar, leaving about a ½ inch of headspace between the top of the pickles and the top of the jar. But we want to make sure that each of the pickles is underneath the brine. Make sure to boil the lids of your jars to aid in the cleaning and sanitation of all your equipment. After our jars are filled with brine, take a wet cloth and wipe the rims of the jars, just making sure that nothing is dislodged and that the boiled tops and the soft rubber gaskets can create a proper seal. After our lids are on, we will take our rings and we will tighten them just hand tight. We don't want to kill it, but we want to make sure that everything is nice and sealed. Make sure that your jars are fully submerged in a water bath canner and boil them for 10 minutes. After your jars are done boiling, set them out on a towel on the counter and wait till they cool. Last but not least, you want to date the jars and do a test. Lightly tap on each of the lids to make sure there's no popping going on. Good to stay in the fridge for roughly 2 or 3 weeks once opened, and they're good to store for around 3 to 6 months. Thanks everyone.